Hi, Stuart here with another 12-factor video. Today we're going to talk about dependencies, rule number 2. Again, you can read the full manifesto on 12factor.net, and if you haven't, I strongly suggest you do because it's a great source of knowledge. So here is the bottom line. Your code's at the mercy of the libraries and runtimes that it needs. That's what a dependency is. So we think about dependencies as things that are in the execution path of your code. So your Node.js application, it needs Node.js. It needs the libraries it uses. It needs the various parts of your application that might be in different files. All these things are dependencies. And if you require a particular operating system to be functional, or you need the dependencies to be in alignment with your operating system, which is far more common, you need to make sure those things are aligned. And so here is the essence of it, right? That is extracted directly from the 12-factor manifesto. I hope they don't mind I'm quoting them directly, but this is such a perfectly crafted statement. And I'll let you read it, but I want to drill into it a little bit. The functionality that you're trying to ship as business value only has value if it's stable. And by stable, I mean it's secure, it's performant, it doesn't crash, it does the thing it's meant to do, it will stand the test of time, right? And that's consistency and currency. So the keys to success are to just not presuppose that anything's on the host other than the operating system. Normally you can sort of say, well, the vendor says that this operating system, or IT says this operating system of version so-and-so is installed on your host and you're going to be deploying to it. Okay, fine. Sometimes you'll get a statement that says, and in addition, the following runtimes are installed and are kept patched. And they'll have a little list of, Node and Python and .NET Core and so on. All right. If you trust the people making the host, then you can trust that. But the cynical version is to simply trust that nothing besides the operating system is there. And by the way, it's perfectly fair. If you think that Ubuntu version 10x is going to be on your host target and you deploy your code to it and it was compiled for Windows and it doesn't work, that's perfectly fair because something went terribly wrong somewhere. But, within the envelope of people being in alignment and that manifests are what they say they are, and to some degree, this whole thing relies on a manifest. And a manifest is simply an enumeration of what is there and what is needed. And so there are, that takes different forms and different programming stacks and different operating systems. But effectively, what we want to be able to ensure is that we have everything to keep your code up, running, and stable. But the corollary to that is that there's an onus on the development team, especially, to keep the libraries up to date and to make sure they're part of your code quality and security scanning program. So I actually was on a project and I went to look at the configuration for their security scanning tool, and they had excluded all of the downstream libraries. And I was very puzzled about this. And I asked, and they said, well, when we include the libraries, the security code scan fails. And I went, what do you mean? And it says, well, it throws up all these security problems. And I had a hard time forming a sentence about that. And finally I said, I think maybe it's trying to tell you something important. And they got kind of thoughtful for a minute. And they go, oh, maybe so. So, the other key to success I always tell customers is if you're running Java or .NET or Node or Python, doesn't really matter what you're running. But the runtime and tooling that you're using, the SDK that you're using, you really want to jump from long-term support version to long-term support version. And unless you're taking a flyer on something and you want to explore the potential of an unsupported or experimental version, and so you're willing to tolerate being out on a limb, you should definitely aim for caution. The communities that keep the run times up and going are quite good about when they say something's a long-term supported version. They're quite good at documenting the little quirks it has and having a good support plan around that. And I'll point out that, if you do have a problem and let's say you have paid support for something, they may very well start off with what version of our SDK or our runtime are you running? And if you tell them you're not on a long-term supported version, they're going to ask you to upgrade to a long-term supported version and call them back if you're still having a problem. So a lot of support agreements have kind of baked into them this idea that you're going to stay current. And that includes not just the runtime like .NET or Java or PHP or Python or Node, but that in fact, you're going to keep your libraries up to date as well. The rubric is that your code is only as secure as your worst segment, which means that if you have a tree of dependencies, you include some library, but in turn it includes some library, which in turn includes some library, which, and it sounds like a shampoo commercial, but in fact, if you go and you run the analysis tool for your stack and you have it unroll all the dependencies, you'll see that in fact that thing you included includes a bunch of other stuff, which includes a bunch of other stuff, and so on. And so it really is incumbent, again, to scan all that code. But you also probably want to think about the fact there's probably a bunch of unused bits in there that you don't need. And so some sort of tree shaking or optimization is going to significantly reduce not only the amount of stuff you have to ship, but the smaller your code is, the smaller the attack surface is, the smaller your code is, the more functions and functionality that you can get rid of without any harm to your core delivery of value, the better off you are. And so HStack has a set of tools. I just picked on .NET Core JavaScript, but there's a set of tools that help you do this. But the number one tool for success is you as a team wanting to stay current and to take responsibility to scan the entire code base recursively and to employ some sort of credible cross-platform tool to check up on the security of the library code that you're using. So this is dependencies are very much about static dependencies, right? And we'll talk about backing services in a different video. Thanks for your kind attention.